this is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. I have a very special treat for you today. We're here on location in beautiful Puerto Rico. We're at the Ann Wigmore Institute, where people from all over the world come to rebuild, rejuvenate, and reconnect. And this is a great place. Many people come here to lose weight, get healthier, and it's just awesome. But we're going to show you today what juicer they choose to use at the Ann Wigmore Institute, and we're going to show you how they use it. So let's come into the student kitchen and check it out. All right, so we're here inside the student kitchen. There's lots of activities outside today. They have little mini rebounders outside. People jump in, get an exercise in the morning. You know, motion creates emotion. Motion is really good. But today we're not talking about motion. We're going to talk about the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center. So what they do here at the Ann Wigmore Institute is that they instruct and teach people about the original Ann Wigmore Living Foods lifestyle. And a real integral part, or one of the building blocks of the Ann Wigmore Living Foods lifestyle, is fermented foods. And how the Omega 8006 fits into that is that this is the machine they choose to use to make the fermented sauerkrauts. And it's really easy to do that in the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center. Besides making sauerkraut in the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center, which is its primary use here at the Ann Wigmore Institute, they also make things maybe like once per program, banana ice cream. So that's just taking frozen bananas, putting it through the machine with the blank plate, and we'll show you that in a minute, and then basically just mushes up the bananas into 100% banana sorbet. Really delicious and really nutritious and much better than any ice cream you'll ever eat. The other thing they do with the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center is make nut and seed pâtés. So nut and seed pâtés, they do that, once per program, so that's very rare. With the sauerkraut, they do that many times, as it is one of the building blocks and foundations of the program. So the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center is more than just a juicer, and we're not actually even going to talk about the juicing capabilities today. You could be sure to check my other videos for information on how it juices, and it does do an excellent job for people in the living in raw foods lifestyle. Oh, also here at Ann Wigmore, can't forget, they encourage you to grow your own sprouts and juice your wheatgrass, and this machine does an amazing job at juicing wheatgrass and other leafy green sprouts, and also greens and other things as well. So next, let's take apart the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center and see how it's set up to make the sauerkraut. A little bit different setup than when you make some juice. So a few parts that come with the machine, they're very important, are the pusher. Never stick anything else into the machine besides the pusher. You could damage the machine or whatever you're pushing into it. You have a nice funnel. This funnel actually helps to guide the produce inside the machine. In the front here, you have the motor housing, an easy latch here. You can open and close. We're going to open it up, take this whole body out. You have this drum cap here, followed by what's called the blank plate. Now this is the important part here. This is the part that allows you to make the sauerkraut, nut pâtés, and the banana ice cream. It's a solid piece, so if we were set up to juice, this part would have a little holes here and holes here, but this is not set up to juice. It's just meant to basically crush up everything that goes inside the machine. Next we have the auger. This is an 8 times harder auger, GE Ultim material, and really durable. Then finally we just have the standard drum. And I like this because it's see-through. You can kind of see what's going on as you're doing it. So let's show you how easy this is to assemble, and also it's easy to assemble and easy to clean because there's just minimal parts to clean once you're finished. So we're going to take this drum and we're going to go ahead and put this on the machine and then slide this little latch over to close. Real simple, real easy. Next we're going to take the auger, push the auger right in the machine. Sometimes you have to spin the auger to get it, go back and get it fully seated. Then we're going to take the solid plate, put that in the machine. Then we're going to take the end cap and screw that on. Real simple, real easy. And finally, put the funnel on. Now we are all ready to make our sauerkraut. So let's get started. So first thing for sauerkraut, and this is the amazing thing about the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center. You could make sauerkraut with only one ingredient, cabbage. That's right, you don't even need to add any salt. Most, other recipes for sauerkraut always include salt. And eating a lot of salt is not necessarily a good thing. Most Americans eat far too much salt, and even people into living in raw foods may be eating too much salt, and that may compromise your health. So here at the Ann Wigmore, using the Omega 8006, they've found out a way so that you don't need to add any additional salt. All you need is the cabbage, and then, of course, you're going to need a container to hold the cabbage. So it's really easy. We're going to simply slice up the cabbage, put it through the machine, what's called homogenize the cabbage, or basically chop it up, and when it comes up with the pulp and the juice mixed together. And that's the key. You can use other machines to do this, but the Ann Wigmore Institute has found that the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center works the best. The standard way for making sauerkraut is to, take your cabbage in a grater like this, and then you just literally have to grate it and grate and grate, and then you get all the shreds. But the problem with that is that it doesn't release enough juice. So then you usually get a big bowl and a big pounding, block and pound it, and you have to pound, and you literally have to pound and mash out the juice out of it. So basically all the grates you have are basically covered in juice, and that could take a long time. But with the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center, you just run this through, it creates the pulp and the juice at the same time. You literally just put that in a glass. Today we're going to use this glass pitcher, and this pitcher will work. If you're going to do a larger quantity, something like this is like a glass vase that has a nice thick wall, and once again it's glass, nice thick. You could put the cabbage in there, and no weight is needed. A lot of places would say, put your cabbage in there, then you're going to put a couple outer leaves on it, and then you want to weight it. Actually, they found that's not needed when you use the Omega 8006 because it releases so much juice. Normally you need the extra weight to hold down the fiber and get it submerged underneath the juice, but when you're using the Omega 8006 as your first step, enough juice is created so that you don't have to do that. It makes things much easier. Another tip is when you are making it, you could actually just get small jars, and you could put the cabbage through and have the cabbage go into the jar and then just ferment in the jar. And then once you're done fermenting in the jar and it's done fermenting, then you just cap it off and put it in the fridge, and your sauerkraut will last like 5 days in the fridge. So you can have individual servings or just jars worth, so it makes it real easy and less complicated and less steps. So the first step is we're going to just go ahead and process the cabbage. The first thing we want to do is we want to carefully remove a couple of the outer leaves. The outer leaves are very important because we're going to put this over our cabbage mash, in the jar once we process all our cabbage. There's a couple leaves right there. I think that'll be good to put on there. Next, all we need to do is cut this cabbage up. And today I am using just a standard white cabbage. You can use the red cabbage, and I actually prefer the red cabbage. Once again, if this is a green cabbage and also in the middle it's white because it hasn't got that much sun. But I like to use the red cabbage because I like to eat foods of color. Foods of color are rich in antioxidants and are definitely better for us. So there we have basically some chunks that we can easily feed through the machine. Now we're going to simply turn the machine on, and in the back of the machine is the on and off switch. And you basically have it on, turns it forward, and if the machine should get clogged up, there's a momentary switch to switch it the other way. It makes the machine go backwards to unclog it. But basically we want to do the one that has the single one, and that's forwards. And now we're just going to take pieces of our cabbage and just drop this right in the machine. And you can see the machine process the cabbage, running it through, really powerful, no problem whatsoever. And out of the front of the machine, you could now see the cabbage slaw coming out. And this is 100% fully processed cabbage, ready to make sauerkraut with. Really nice texture. Now this is a fairly broken down texture. If you want some texture in your sauerkraut and you don't like the texture the Omega makes, what you can then do is you could actually use a shredder and shred some additional cabbage, in addition to what you're putting through the machine, and mix that in with the sauerkraut you're making. But you don't want to put too much shredded cabbage because you're basically going to dilute the amount of juice and fiber that you're getting. So this is sauerkraut. We can also make veggie kraut with this same mixture. What you'll then do is you're going to use 80% cabbage and 20% of some other kind of vegetables. Usually like your cruciferous vegetables, things like broccoli and cauliflower. You can use little broccoli florets or little pieces of cauliflower cut up, small pieces. You can also use root vegetables such as shred up some carrots or beets into your veggie kraut. Basically, you're just going to add those in between the layers of the cabbage. So you're going to want to basically layer it all up. So we're going to go ahead and continue to process our cabbage through the omega. Now it's very important when you're cutting your cabbage to fit into the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center to cut it into small pieces, as the feed chute is about 1.5 inches in diameter. You'll need to be able to fit the slices easily in there. So I'm cutting this all up into smaller slices so that we can easily fit this in the machine. And once you have it cut into small slices, it makes it feeding into the machine very easy. You literally just drop the whole thing in there, and you'll use the pusher to gently push that in. Not a lot of downward force is needed to push the produce into the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center. So we're about halfway done processing all this cabbage, and you can see the pulp coming out of the machine after the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center processes the cabbage. You can see basically it's coming out with a whole bunch of juice and all the fibers broken down. And that's really what you need to make a good sauerkraut without adding any additional salt or seasonings to make it culture. And you don't even need to add any extra culture starter or starter. And that's because cabbage is one of the only things that'll basically attract the lactobacillus or the friendly bacteria out of the air and literally culture itself. And that's why you don't need to add anything else when you're culturing the cabbage. The other thing is, the reason why they say sauerkraut is so beneficial is because of the lactobacillus, or basically what I call friendly bacteria. So inside our guts, inside our stomachs, we should have a big population of this friendly bacteria, which helps us in many ways. It helps us to basically digest our food more efficiently and more effectively. They also say that it can play a role in your immune system and immunity. So if you build up your probiotics in your gut, then you're building your immune system. And that, I think, can only be a good thing. So once you make the sauerkraut, how do you use it? Well, the thing I like to do with it are many things. I like to just take like maybe a scoopful and mix it in with my salad at night. Sometimes I'll actually take the sauerkraut and blend it up in the blender with my salad dressing. It gives your salad dressing a nice little zing. You can use it many ways. You can take it and use it actually as a dip. You can eat it straight. However you want to eat your sauerkraut or other fermented foods is definitely a good way to do it. So now we've almost processed our whole cabbage. We have a couple little small pieces left, so we're just going to simply drop those into the machine and let those process up. Now the other thing that's really cool about the sauerkraut is, back in the olden days when people would sail on ships, they would get scurvy because they didn't have enough vitamin C. But you can't take fresh cabbages on ships because, they'll rot, basically. But once you actually ferment and basically the bacteria pre-digests the cabbage, it will no longer rot. So they actually used to take sauerkraut basically as their vitamin C on the ships in the olden days because it is preserved at that point. So now we're finished processing all the cabbage through the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center, and now all we're going to simply do is take the cabbage in the bowl and we're going to put it into a nice jar or into the container that we're going to ferment it in. So we're going to turn off the machine, we're going to grab our container over here, and we're going to take a spoon and carefully scoop this out. And I don't know if you can see that, but this is a nice fine, like ultra fine shredded consistency. And if we just look in here, you can see literally all the juice here in the bottom, and the juice and the fiber is all mixed up. And that's why juicing is so beneficial, because it separates the juice from the fiber. When you're using the blank plate, it basically just combines all the juice and the fiber up. So, when you are making sauerkraut, this is the texture you exactly need to be successful. So we're going to simply put this in, and once again I do want to mention, as we're layering this in, you should use minimum 80% cabbage. You could use 100% like I am today, but if you did want to add some small broccoli florets or small pieces of cauliflower, what you would do is you'd layer it up, you'd put a layer like that, then you'd put a couple things of broccoli or cauliflower or shredded vegetables, like root vegetables like carrots or beets, and then you basically pile on more cabbage. So when you looked at this, you would have the vegetables in there basically hidden, and all you would see is a cabbage. So you're basically like burying the other vegetables inside there. So what we're doing today is we're just making 100% straight sauerkraut, and once again, this is 100% cabbage, no salt, no seasonings added. And you can use some seasonings, although I don't recommend adding any salt. You can add seasonings such as seaweeds are excellent to add to your sauerkraut because they will add the minerals to your sauerkraut, and also it'll make it taste a lot more interesting. So we're pretty much done scooping it in, all the cabbage into our container. This next step is super important and very important. The next step is you're going to want to take the pusher that came with the Omega and use this, and you're going to want to tamp this down. And this is one of the most important steps. You want to get all the air bubbles out. So you can see here we have an air pocket. If you leave any air pockets when you're making the sauerkraut, what's going to happen in that air pocket is that it will mold, and you do not want this. So you want to take the tamper and tamp out all the air pockets and make sure you don't have any, you can't see any air pockets in the jar that you are using. So we're just going to come in here and tamp this down, mix it all up, get all of those air bubbles and all the air pockets out, because that is not a good thing when making sauerkraut. So we're very carefully tamping this down, getting all the air bubbles out. And once again, you're going to save lots of money making your own sauerkraut at home. This is very easy. Cabbage is actually one of the least expensive vegetables that you can buy. But if you go to buy sauerkraut in the store, besides them adding salt and other things that you may not want in your sauerkraut, it's very expensive. So sometimes 16 ounces of sauerkraut can cost $8 to $10. And that's insane, and it's so easy to do yourself at home with your own organic cabbage and the Omega 8006 Nutrition Center. So there you go. I pretty much got all the bubbles out, and I've tapped it down so it's nice and packed in there. And now we're just basically going to clean up the top to get most of the cabbage off, and we're going to make it a nice level surface here at the top of the container. Then what we're going to simply do is we're going to take some of these leaves that we had pulled off the cabbage, and we're just going to simply put that to cover the top. And what's going to happen is within about 3 days at room temperature, so we are here in Puerto Rico, it's a little bit warmer here than maybe where you are in the world, but most people keep their houses between like high 60s and 80 or something, even in the winter time. So at standard room temperature, it may take about 3 days, maybe a day or two longer, depending if you keep your house too cold. If your house is too cold, then the fermentation won't take place basically as fast. So it's going to take an extra day. How will you know when your sauerkraut is done? Well, you'll know because you could basically take off the top layer and try some. If it basically tastes like mushed up cabbage, guess what? It's not done. It can take up to like 5 days in some situations for the sauerkraut to be ready. How do you know if your sauerkraut is overdone? Well, it's overdone if it's like really bubbling and it really tastes super fizzy. And then it's probably overdone. And you're going to get a feel for it when it's just right, and whenever it agrees with you. When you taste it, it's like, that's a good sauerkraut. That's when you know it's ready. So it could be between 3 or 5 days, but generally closer to 3 days. And then once it is ready, then you want to take it and put it in a jar. Seal off the jar, put it in the fridge. Then, the refrigerator slows down the fermentation process. The fresh sauerkraut will then last about 5 more days, up to 5 days in the fridge. So, start using it, mix it into your salads, eat it as your meal, blend it into your dressings for your salads. Wrap it up in nori rolls. So many ways you could use fresh sauerkraut. So I'm glad that the Ann Wigmore Institute allowed me to film this video here in their student kitchen so that I could show you what they do with their Omega 8006 Nutrition Center. To learn more about the Ann Wigmore Institute, visit annwigmore.org. And once again, this is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for our YouTube visitors.